Welcome to Returning to Soul, a podcast for lawyers and other high achievers seeking deeper meaning, purpose, and fulfillment in their work and lives. My name is Jessie Brown. I practiced law for 15 years before becoming a coach and purpose guide for lawyers and other high achievers. I also work as a meditation teacher, breathwork facilitator, sound healer, and forest bathing guide. And I facilitate retreats in Sedona, Arizona. And my next retreat, which is for women, is October 1st through the 4th. So please reach out if you're interested in learning more. My guest today is Billy Zerillo, founder of Your Money, Your Purpose. Billy and I connected on LinkedIn probably over a year ago, maybe 1 to 2 years ago. And Billy, I really enjoy your content. It really resonates with me. And I think what you're doing is unique. You have a really unique voice in this space and a unique perspective. So I think our audience is going to be really excited to hear from you today. And I'd love for you to share just a bit about you and your work with our audience.
Yeah, well, first and foremost, thank you so much for having me on today. I was looking really forward to this. Like you said, we met about a year some change, and so our messages aligned. So it just felt natural to have a conversation, and so I'm just so glad for that. And so for those that don't know me, my name is Billy Zerillo. The boring answer is that I'm a financial advisor, right? The more interesting answer is how I do it and who I serve, and so I really focus on the behavioral side of finance, understanding how we think and feel about money, because money touches everything that we do, right? We think about it, we work for it. It provides us with experiences with our family and friends, and so. But there's also a lot of money stories that we carry. There's a lot of things that impact our decisions that we make, and sometimes those aren't always the decisions that align with who we really want to become. And so I focus on the behavioral side of money, but the interesting part is that I serve mainly women executives, women, business owners, entrepreneurs, women that have been left by the financial services industry to figure it out on their own. And so I really wanted to step in and help women align their money choices with what's really important to them at the end of the day, because at the end of the day, that's what really matters. So again, I'm really excited about this conversation today. It's going to be great.
Yes, I love that, Billy. Thank you so much. And I find that our work is so complementary because I'm passionate about helping lawyers mostly. I do have a couple clients who are not lawyers. Mostly I work with women. I have a couple clients who are not women, but I help my clients align their work with their values, their strengths, what matters to them, what's most important to them. So you do very similar work when it comes to finances.
Yeah, 100%. There's a lot of overlap. A lot of these skills that you teach, that I teach, overlap because they're transferable in the sense of, well, we're talking about money, we're talking about work, we're talking about family. Like it really, like you said, what it comes down to is aligning to your values, what's important to you. I think if we can figure that out, like if people can figure out what's important to them and align whatever they're doing to that, they're going to have really good results in a lot of different areas of their life. And so it's always hard to achieve balance, but if we can always be in pursuit of what's really important to us, I think that's a life worth chasing.
Yeah, absolutely. It makes me think of the idea of having, your own like true north or North Star, that you're orienting your choices toward. And I'm curious, I have my own sort of hypothesis on why lawyers, most of the people I work with, may find themselves in a job that doesn't really align with who they are and what they deeply want, what matters to them. I would love to hear from you what you think contributes to your clients, before they work with you, perhaps not having their finances aligned with what's most important to them.
Well, that's really great. That's a good question. Before clients come to me, I think about my own personal money journey, right? I think about my own personal money story and the things that I learned from my parents, whether they were good or bad or ugly, doesn't matter. Those are still things that you pick up and they impact every decision that you're going to make with money. You know, my parents fought a lot about money when I was young. And so, surprise, surprise, I had a really negative relationship with money. I was afraid of it. I was scared of it. And so I was always, second guessing every decision that I was going to make. And that fear of money led to having arguments with my own wife around money because I didn't know how to communicate around money. And so most of the time when clients come in, that's the first place that we're starting. We're trying to understand where the origin story is for some of these things that they are believing, right? I don't like to necessarily label a belief a negative belief or a positive belief. We don't know what that belief is, how it serves you. And so, but the goal is to bring that belief to the surface and ask that question, hey, how is this serving you? Where did this belief come from? How can we reframe this in order to align with what's really important to you? That's going to be a common theme with me. What's really important to you? Not what's important to society, not what's important to, your career in the sense of what your boss is telling you to do. That's important, but what's really important is about understanding what's important to you. So a lot of the clients that come in have all these stories, have all these patterns that they're carrying, and they just, you think about it of a backpack, right? They just kept shoving things into their backpack until it got to a point where you're like, we've all been there in high school, right? Where you're trying to carry every book and you just feel like you're about to fall over. That's what a lot of the clients that come in, that's the visual that we get. They're just carrying so much. And so we want to help them unpack those things and be like, do we need to carry these things? And so to go back to your question, like, we're questioning, like, how was money modeled early on in your life? Like, what were some of the things that you remember as a child or even as a young adult growing up that you learned about money? And often we never take the time to learn about those things. We never ask those questions. So we just keep carrying those things because we're like, well, this is just how it's always supposed to be, right? This is how my life's supposed to be. I'm supposed to be struggle, right? But does it really need to be a struggle? So yeah, so that's usually the first place that we want to start. It's just, what's the story? What are we dealing with first?
Yes, that really resonates. I mean, with what I see with my clients and even in my own life. So thank you for sharing that. And, as you were sharing, I couldn't help but think of my own, early experiences with what I witnessed in my own family. And yeah, it's like money was, there was never enough, and comparison with other kids that had more and, all of those beliefs. So I think I can see personally how it contributed to my career choice of becoming a lawyer because I really wanted to be a creative writer and I wanted to do a more creative pursuit, but it was the money piece that I was terrified of. Like, I have to be able to support myself. My parents divorced when I was young, and then I had a single mom who really struggled to provide, support us. And that sort of drove me to choose a career that I felt would be financially stable. Mm-hmm. And I didn't really think about some of the things I help my clients with, like, what are my gifts or what are my strengths or what lights me up? What types of service do I really enjoy doing? I didn't ask those questions. I just thought, what can I do that will provide a stable, good income where I will always be okay financially? And that was the main, factor when I chose that career. So I'm curious. I work with quite a few lawyers who want to make some type of change in their career. Some of them want to transition out of law. Some are at law firms and they want to go part-time. So they've got young kids or some other things going on in their life and they want to reduce their billable hours. Some want to go from a law firm to in-house. So all of these things usually require a pay cut and sometimes quite significant. My husband went from a big law firm in-house 11 years ago and it was almost in half, the pay cut. So this is a lot of times it's quite a large pay cut for lawyers to leave a big law firm and do something else. And the money piece is usually the biggest hurdle. Sometimes there's other, concern about status or what people will think or their family or whatever, but a lot of times money is the big barrier. So I'm curious if you have any clients you've worked with that have dealt with something like that, like navigated that and how you supported them in that.
Yeah, tons of stories come to mind.
Yeah.
And there's one in particular, and I love this story because like when you think about taking a pay cut, the very first thing that runs through your mind is not positive, right? It's very negative. You're like, oh, can I do that? Like, is that plausible? Is that plausible for me to do that? And I think we really need to reframe the way we're thinking about that is like, what is that going to free me up to do more of, right? Like if I'm at a place in my career where it's just, it's basically eating me alive, right? Like it's consuming me. We need to get to a place where we need to switch that wiring and say, if I were to leave here, what would become better in my life, right? And so when I was, one of the clients that comes to mind, she was a big CFO, right? And one of the things that we do every year with our clients is we do what's called a pulse check. And just think of like you're going to your doctor, you get your pulse checked, and you're like, oh, everything looks good. But one of the questions that we ask is around career, right? And so I asked her, I said, how fulfilled are you in your career right now? And she hesitated. And so right then and then I knew, I was like, okay, there's something going on here, right? That wasn't going on the previous year. And so she started to explain, like, I've always wanted to just, open up my own bookkeeping business or go work for a local bookkeeping business. Like I work for this big corporation. I just feel like I'm a number, when I'm looking, we're serving all these clients, but I don't get to see any of those stories. I just get to see the numbers on a page, and it's just really, I don't get to have any interaction with them. And so she was two things. She loves the number side of things, but she wanted to connect the people side of things. She wanted to, when you're a bookkeeper and you're working with a business owner, you're having that intimate conversation around their numbers, right? And that's what she was craving. She'd gotten so high up in this food chain that, she was running out of oxygen, basically, right? And so she said, hey, like, if I could do that, I could spend more time with my family. I could go on more vacations. Like, I wouldn't always be on call, right? Like, I'm sure some of the lawyers that you work with are always on call, right? Even in the weekends, right? All 24/7, right? You better respond to your email or else you're in trouble, right? And so that's how she felt. She felt like she was in this place where she couldn't breathe, right? And all she wanted to do was take a breath. And so we started to explore that. We said, we knew that she was going to take some level of pay cut, right? She's making really good money, like you said, kind of has the golden handcuffs on, right? Has the car, has the stock, all the stuff. But she didn't also want to degrade her lifestyle. Like she wanted to still do a lot of the things that she loves to do with her family, her friends, all the different things that she loves to do. And so the first thing that we did is we addressed the main issue, right? What the income, right? The money, right? So we like I said, we kind of went on that head on, and we said, all right, so if you want to leave this place, right, and you're going to take a pay cut, you need to focus a lot of your energy to saving right now. And so putting money away, obviously an emergency fund, which she had, but putting money away in a different bucket that can grow for her, but also she can use for whatever she wants. And that's what we really focused our energy on. We kind of actually took we reduced some of the savings that was going into a retirement account, and we really focused on that one bucket because that was going to give her the freedom that she wanted, right? The freedom of choice, the freedom for when she actually found the company that she wanted to work with, that she could walk away freely and not have to feel any anxiety. So right there, that reduced some anxiety for her because she knew we had a number in mind. We knew exactly step by step what we needed to do in order to get to that number. So she felt good about that. But then it became, oh, well, if I'm going to take a step down in income, I don't want to degrade my lifestyle. Like we love going to the beach. We love doing all these things. And so what we actually did is that we sat down. I remember I was sitting at her kitchen table, her and her husband, and we listed out all the things that they spend their money on. Everything, bills, obviously you got to pay those, right? But bills like clothes, whatever they swipe their card for or had $1 for, we we wrote it down. No questions, no shame, no blame. I just need to know. And then we went through each one of those items and we asked one simple question, right? If your goal, their ultimate goal was to spend more time with their family and to be more free of anxiety, free of the ball and chain, we looked at each one of those items and we said, does this item help you get closer to your ultimate, what's important to you, or does it move you further away? And we literally went through item by item, and the things that fulfilled us, that served us, we kept. We put those in a bucket. We set those to the side. There were a ton of things that they were spending their money on that they were just spending. They didn't even realize it. And those things weren't serving them, and they could actually live without them and not downgrade their lifestyle. And so we actually were able to cut those things out, not spend our money on those things anymore. And so when she actually decided, finally, we get down the road and she finds the company that she wants to be a part of. And she's like, hey, this is it. Hey, we made the jump. She actually didn't downgrade her lifestyle at all. Yes, she was spending less. She was bringing in less income, but she was actually living the same lifestyle that she was already enjoying, and didn't have to sacrifice any of the things that were really important to her and her husband and her kids. And so I love that story because, on the surface, society is telling you, what are you doing? Like, you should be making more money, right? You should be spending more, making more so that you can have more experiences. But she took a step back and said, let me actually subtract from my life because I'm going to add in these different areas. And so it's a beautiful story because, like I said, we were able to give her peace of mind, but also help her accomplish the things that were really important to her. So it's an amazing story of breaking those golden handcuffs.
Yeah, what an amazing story. It really is. I love it. And that is such a huge success. It really is. And I love this reframe from taking a pay cut, which may be the reality that the income has gone down, to what am I gaining? This, because it's a trade-off. You're trading money for usually time, but also sometimes stress, sometimes being on call, as you mentioned. So what am I gaining by making this job, decision that may involve a lower, income, but we usually do that because we're gaining quite a lot. And I know, just looking at my own situation, I left a big law firm about a year and a half ago to go all in on coaching. Obviously that was a pay cut. But what I've gained, there's just no way I would trade it for any amount of money. So the joy of doing work I love, that I find really meaningful, having freedom over my time, things like that are really meaningful. So I love that you help your clients identify, what is it for you? What really matters? And let's align our, money choices and job choices with that. It's huge.
Yeah.
And,
100%.
Yeah. And I think about the way you talk to your client about, let's make this list and be really intentional with each item. Does it contribute joy to your life? Does it, add to what really matters to you or not? Is it neutral or just doesn't really matter? You could get rid of this expense and it wouldn't have a real impact. That's something I try to help clients do with their time. So looking at every, thing that they're saying yes to, letting them know, every time we say yes to something, we're saying no to something else. So that's true with money too. Like you're sharing, every time we're spending money on something, that's money that's not going to something else that may be, more aligned with our, what's most important with our real goals.
Yeah, I love that distinction because I tell clients all the time, you might be exchanging money for a service, but what you're actually really exchanging is your energy, your time. It took you energy and time to make that money. And so, and you don't get that back, right? You don't get time back. So you have to be intentional of how you're spending your money because it's a direct reflection of how you spend your time. Going back to that one story, I just wanted to share this because it's something that, as an advisor, it can be easy for advisors to just talk about investment returns and all those types of things, which are super important, right? They're important. But something she said to me that really was super impactful is that, going back to her family, she said that she gets to pick up her kids from school every day, right? She gets to wait for the bus to come and she gets to pick them up, right? The dad drops them off before he goes to work, and then she's there to pick them up off the bus because she gets to work from home and all this stuff. And so I thought that's something I wanted to share, because that I feel like that drives the point home to what you were saying, like you making a jump, right? Yeah, you took a pay cut, but look at all the things that you gained, right? You gained your life back, and that's really important.
Yes, I love that. And I don't know, have you read Bronnie Ware's book, The Top Five Regrets of the Dying? I know some folks have read it or come across it. It's okay if you haven't.
I haven't, but I like the idea. Before you get into it, you know who Les Brown is?
Yeah, I've heard of him.
The
Yeah,
motivational speaker.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
he talks about don't let your dreams die with you, right? That sort of thing. So, but yeah, no, I haven't read that book. It's probably going to go on my to read list.
Yeah, it's a beautiful book. And I mean, as an aside, both of my parents passed away when I was in college, and I've sort of been interested in the impact of mortality and like death as a teacher since then. So I've read a lot of books like this, and I volunteered with hospice and have done some other things, trained as a death doula, and done some other things in that space. And that book, The Top Five Regrets of the Dying, is one of my favorite books on this topic. And what you were sharing reminded me of a story in that book. So the most common regret at the end of life, that according to her, was I wish I'd had the courage to live a life true to myself and not the life others expected of me.
Hmm.
And the second most common regret is I wished I hadn't worked so much.
Mm.
And she tells stories to illustrate each of these regrets because she got them, from her clients and from working with people. And that second regret, there was a story that kind of haunts me, but that's the point. It's a lesson. There was a man, and I don't know that if he was a lawyer. I thought maybe he was based on some of the descriptions of his work, but whatever he was a highly paid professional. And he was in his later years, like retirement age. And his wife kept asking, when are you going to retire? When are you going to retire? And their dream, he worked a lot. So their dream was to retire and travel together. And that's what they had talked about for their whole life. And she was really wanting him to retire. And every year he'd say, one more year, one more deal, one more this, one more that. And they had plenty of money. They didn't need the extra income. And then finally she was like begging, like, when are you going to retire? So he says, okay, fine. This is truly the last year I'm working. He retires, and 3 months into his retirement, his wife is diagnosed with a terminal illness and dies.
Mm.
And he lived with such regret because he had been waiting, oh, just a little more money. I need a little more, a little more, a little more, a little more. And then it was then my wife and I can enjoy this retirement that we planned. And we have no idea how long we have to live. And I'm super passionate about this, not just because of this story, but my mom died in her 40s and looked so healthy. I mean, a healthy, vibrant woman. And we just never know. So this idea of selling our energy, our time, trading it for money right now, if we don't enjoy our job, it's different. If you enjoy your job, it provides you with meaning. That's kind of a different thing. But if you're truly just living for that paycheck and you're not willing to look at what we're discussing, like what's really important to you, how are you trading your time and energy? We can end up in a situation like that. So I'm passionate about not putting off the life we want to live today for the future. Our kids are going to grow up. We're going to get older. We have no idea how many healthy years we or the people we love have left.
Yeah, I'm a firm. I mean, that's part of my DNA is I don't want people to plan for the 30 years down the road, like, and that's all we're doing. I have a story where a cousin of mine who worked at a job for 45 years finally gets to retire. Him and his wife are super excited. And 3 months into his retirement, he passes away. Right. And I wonder, if he had those same regrets, right? That if he thought about, maybe if I just worked a little bit less and spent a little bit more time at home, or like if I would have retired a little bit sooner. And it's what I have found is when questioning like people around this topic, right? Like whenever we don't have a clearly defined what's important to me, what do I actually want out of this life, we're always chasing more because we haven't clearly defined a destination for ourselves. And when we don't define a destination, any destination will do, but we always are chasing and chasing, chasing. So it's like you reach that milestone that you've been planning, you reach that mountaintop, you're like, well, I'll probably be a little bit more, I thought I was going to be happy, but I see that other mountaintop over there. I'd probably be a little bit happier if I reach that mountaintop. And then they get to that mountaintop, and it's a never-ending cycle. It's a never-ending loop that we get into. And so that's why it's so important to do the work that we do, because you have to define what's important to you, because that gives you the stopping point for when to stop working or to stop saving, in the sense of like, retirement or something along those lines, and step away, because you're at a place where, hey, like I can fully embrace myself in my family, my friends, the things that I love to do. So I love that. I love the fact that idea came up, because more people need to hear it. That It's not always the pursuit of more, it's the pursuit of what's important to you.
Beautiful. I love that. Yes. And I really appreciate what you said about, until we define that, we are chasing more, and it's like this treadmill. And you brought to mind as you were speaking a client who is in her 60s, and she's actually a CEO of a company, and she's pretty successful. She's not a lawyer. And she wanted to retire this year. And that was kind of the thought, right? And then she had one deal, like an opportunity to do another project for another client. And it was kind of going to take over her life for at least 6 months, if not more. It was a bit well-paying project, but very time consuming. And she didn't really want to do it. And she's been enjoying scaling back over the past year. She's spending more time doing things that are really deeply meaningful to her, and has really been enjoying her life, like more than ever in her before. And so when I asked her, like, she's like, well, it'd be good money. It could be, I could use the money. And I just said, like, really? Or she's like, I need the money, I think is what she said. And I was like, do you? Like, I don't know. I'm not her financial advisor, so I don't know her bank account. So I was like, do you need it? And she's like, no, I actually don't. But she accepted it. She took the project. And that was about a month ago, and we just met last week, and yeah, it's a lot. And she's like, I don't know if I should have taken that. I'm like, well, now you will fully be done when this project's done. You'll be 100% sure that you're finished and ready to retire. But it's hard sometimes. Just that thought, like, what is enough? How much is enough? What matters? And what am I trading, as you said, for this income? What life am I trading? What time, what energy, to earn this?
Yeah. Well, it's what we're programmed to do as kids, right? It's work really hard, go to school, get a good job, work really hard, and you'll have everything that you ever imagined. And it's like, it's always more, accomplish this. What's your title? How, so many people defined who, like, that's another reason, like, she's a CEO. She probably for a long time defined herself as who she was at work. And so that's another thing that's really interesting to talk about when somebody's approaching retirement or getting close to that age, that they've, for so long, I've been a CEO, or I've been a business owner, I've been a lawyer, and to let go of that identity scares the crap out of them. And that's why it's so important, always going back to this overarching theme of like, what's important to me, right? Because that has to outweigh that identity. Because when you retire, you're not going to be the CEO anymore. You're not going to be the lawyer anymore, right? You might still have the the plaque on the wall, But like that chapter of your life is now over. And so who are you now? Who are you becoming? Because yeah, we just talked about, you never know the next moment, but you could very well live for another 30, 35 years. That's another lifetime. That's so much more to experience in this world that's possible. So like, who are you going to be in that aspect of your life? So there's a lot of different facets when it comes to money, and like I said at the beginning, it touches everything that we do.
It really does. And I love what you said about identity. I'm speaking at this summit for women lawyers in a couple weeks, and my topic is on identity. And the summit is about rest and different types of rest that this woman who's hosting the summit that she's come up with. And so one of the facets is identity rest. So I'm speaking on that. And I find it really fascinating exactly what you're sharing about how these job titles or these roles, I mean, it could be being a parent, being a spouse, being whatever, a marathon runner or something else. Like these identities can sort of imprison us, whether it's our job or something else, because everything changes. I mean, that's the one certainty, is that everything is always changing, and these identities do change through life. So holding them lightly, realizing that's actually not who I am. That's just a role that maybe I played for a little while and now I'm doing something else, can really be freeing, but it can be hard to get there. And even that question, like, you meet someone new, it's often like, what do you do? This
Yep.
idea, what do you do as if that's the most important thing about that person. So the culture reinforces this idea that like work is your identity, is who you are. And yeah, so I think working on that piece with people, like untangling, is important. It reminds me of a client who's always been in prestigious law firms, went to a very prestigious law school. But her heart, she really wants to be at a small boutique firm or maybe go in-house. Like that's just kind of how she's wired. I think she would thrive in a smaller environment. And she brings it up in coaching, like it's the status piece. She's like, ooh, like to go to a no-name firm no one's heard of, or some podunk company nobody's heard of, when she's always been at very well-known, prestigious firms. So it can come up in a lot of ways, this like identity, attachment to that, and external approval.
Yeah, you hit on another point that I think is important, and it's status, right? And you see it a lot in high performers. You see it a lot in lawyers. Like my dad was a lawyer for 35 years. Like I know what that world is like, in the sense of like always having to keep up with the Joneses, right? And one of my clients is a lawyer, and she has these two really high-end nice cars, and I just remember looking at the payments and stuff like that, and I was just like, do you like these cars? And she goes, I hate these cars. And I was like, well, why do you have them? And she's like, well, because the partner at our firm is very cognizant of the cars in the parking lot, and so if there's a client driving in, they want nice cars in the parking lot because that's a status symbol, right? And so it's like, she was driving, a nice car, but maybe a model or two older. And the partner actually came up to her. He's like, am I not paying you enough?
Wow.
Like, am I not paying you enough? You should be driving a nicer car, right? Because to him, it's all about status, right? But for her, it was about utility, right? So there's two different ways. There's two different mindsets that we buy with, right? There's status buying and there's utility buying. Like utility is like, oh, I like this serves a purpose in my life. That's why I'm buying it. Whereas status is like, hey, I'm just chasing what everybody else thinks about me, right? And that ends up leaving us burnt out. That leaves us in a career, taking on jobs or taking on clients that we might have not have taken on because they don't fit us. And all of a sudden now we're having to do things that we didn't want to do to pay for the things that we didn't want to impress the people that we don't like. So it becomes a kind of, a revolving door of spending. And so for her, she ended up leaving that firm, and now she works for a different firm, a construction firm, and so she loves it there because it's like it's all utility. It's nothing. There's no status there, right? It's very that way of thinking, and so it fits her. So, but I just thought that I forgot. I don't even know if I've ever shared that story with you, but it was such an interesting story because I was like, that probably happens more often than there's probably some lawyers who are going to be listening to this and be like, yeah, that's happened to me.
Yes. I mean, I love that story. It's wild, but it shows the conditioning, the social cultural conditioning, the brainwashing, the programming that we all go through in our culture. And I love this highlight of the disconnect. Like if the car brought her joy and she got in and ooh, I love being in this car and really, okay, all right. But the fact is she didn't even love the car. So it's like,
It's like, I hate driving this thing. It's like
yes,
$800 to change the oil. I don't like this.
yeah, exactly. And I mean, I was caught in that trap for years too. So I just want to acknowledge, I remember when I was a summer associate at a big firm in DC, I did not come from money. And the lawyers there, I remember seeing like they were wearing Chanel and those red bottom shoes. And I didn't even know what that stuff was, but it was like, I quickly became programmed. This is what you want, you want to look like that. You want to wear that stuff. So I was like, okay, I need, so I quickly started spending my bonuses, my salary. I mean, I lived paycheck to paycheck on a big law salary. It's like, what? I didn't pay off my student loans till 2 years ago in my mid 40s,
Yeah.
because I spent everything on designer purses or nicer this, nice that, whatever. But I didn't even care about it. Like, I don't care about those things. It did not bring me joy. It was totally a status thing. And like the role, looking the part, I need to look this, I need to have a designer briefcase or whatever. And it's like, it didn't bring me joy.
Yeah, it's not going to make you a better lawyer. It's not going to make me a
No.
better advisor to wear a suit and tie. Like that's a status symbol, right?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's just being cognizant of that. There are some things that we buy that are status driven that aren't inherently bad. It's just, again, it's questioning, right? There's a book that I'm reading called The Art of Spending Money. The guy that wrote it also wrote The Psychology of Money, right? And so it talks about these things like, just because you think something is not good to spend your money on might bring me a lot of joy, right? And so it's not to question whether or not you're right, I'm wrong. It's what's true to you. Is this bringing you joy? Is this in alignment with what you really want? Not what society tells us, not what your boss tells you you should be doing with your money. It's what do I want? And
Yes.
that is like I said, I was going to be a broken record. That is the idea, the North Star of what we always try to drive clients to. And the same with you is, hey, like, does this bring alignment to my life? If it doesn't, then we're not doing it. And if it does, cool, let's figure it out.
Totally. I completely agree. Yeah, whether something is a designer item or not, luxury item or not, or cost a certain amount or not, those are neutral to me. It's like it doesn't matter. It's the why, the motivation, and also what is this providing for me? Or what do I think it's going to provide for me? And will it actually provide that for me? Because mostly what we're all going for is a feeling or an experience. We all want to, I mean, basically, we all want to be happy. So we are usually thinking this thing, if we do some digging and get curious, oh, if I have this item, maybe I will belong. Maybe I will be, admired or accepted. And maybe we tie that with love or happiness or friendship or something. But once we do some digging, we can get clarity. It reminds me of this is a little different, but when I was a practicing lawyer, I thought I wanted to be, an equity partner at a big firm. That is the program. When you're in law school, that's the goal. And so, I mean, there's maybe beyond the Supreme Court, there's a couple other paths you could choose that are, very encouraged, but that's one of them. So that's what I thought I wanted. And it was a friend of mine who is an equity partner at a firm, at my old firm. And he said, just with compassion, like how I always sense from you, you are not judgmental. You're really compassionate and you're a very safe person to talk to about money. And he was very compassionate, and he just said, why? Like, why do you want this? And it didn't make me feel defensive. I was just like, why do I want that? And I was 40 and I hired my first coach at the time. I was like, let me figure this out. And I realized, oh, I thought it would, of course, it would be more money, but me, really, I thought it's going to get me some status, or I'm going to be in the club. A lot of my friends are partners and I want to be in the club with them. And I also maybe thought it would give me like security forever. And I started asking friends who are partners, like, tell me, how do you spend your day? How do you spend your weekends? What's it like when you go on vacation? Tell me about the holidays, and just, I was like, this is not for me.
Yeah.
It's just not. And it is for some people. It's not to knock it, but it was just realizing this is not actually aligned with like what I want for my life. But just bringing some curiosity to our choices, whether it's our job choices, our spending choices, all of that.
Yeah, I love that word, curiosity. Just be curious about what your mind, like, we float around on this rock for however many years we're here, and we never ask ourselves those types of questions. We just exist. We just go through the motions. We go through on autopilot, and we never take time to really explore those things, those aspects of our mind. And so do that, right? Be curious about what you spend your money. Be curious about where you want to be in the next 5 years, or just ask questions. And I love that because we don't do enough of it. And I think if we took the time to really do that, I think a lot more people would find fulfillment in life. I think a lot more people would be less anxious. I feel like a lot less people would be burnt out in their careers. I think we see a little bit more alignment and a little bit more joy out of everybody. So, yeah, I love that you brought that word up. That's a really good word.
Yeah, well, thank you. And, I just think it's what we're both talking about and helping individuals with, helping our clients with, is being intentional, versus an
Yep.
autopilot kind of, this is how I've always done it way of living, and just pausing and bringing that curiosity and getting awareness. Like, you had your clients write out all their spending, and I often look at how my clients are spending their time, but it's
Hmm.
like just starting with that awareness. Where's my money going? Where's my time going? Or my energy? What is it that I actually want? How do what matters to me? All of that, and then we gain the ability to make different choices that are in alignment with those values.
Yeah, awareness is key in everything that we do, because, like you said, we just our minds are just programmed just to keep doing because we're bombarded with stuff all day, every day, whether it's news or choices that we need to make or whatever it might be. And so it's so much easier just to keep collecting things, whether those are stories, patterns, things in your closet. It doesn't matter. We just collect things, and then before we know it, we're like, how did all this stuff get in the house? Like, how many times have you said that to yourself? Like, how did the garage get so full? Like, how did the basement get so full? And it's because, like you said, we're a lack of awareness of like what we're doing. We're just searching for joy. We're searching for meaning. We're searching to fill the void that's in us, that we're just collecting things. And then before we know it, it's like, how did I get here?
Yeah,
And yeah.
that's it exactly. I mean, you reminded me of like when I was probably my most unhappy in my career. So I had times as a lawyer where I, enjoyed it more or less. It was never like an amazing fit for me, but there were periods where I changed practice areas a few times, and some of the practice areas were more aligned, and we're fine. I wanted more than fine, but I had some years that they were fine. They were not that bad. But during the years that were really out of alignment, so for me that was doing defense litigation, so very contentious work, and my values were not necessarily aligned with what I was doing, and I was working long hours and kind of around the clock. That's when I did the most online shopping,
Mm-hmm.
and it was that dopamine. I mean, the way I perceive it is I was fairly miserable, and I didn't have time to do what actually brings me joy, which is like time with my family, time in nature, reading a good book, like just putting on music and dancing, doing something creative. I didn't have those things in my life. So it was like these substitute hits of happiness that I would online shop, online shop. And so I still have tons of stuff with tags on it that I never wore. It didn't really bring me joy. And it's like I don't know, just a warning signal about those substitute hits. But we do get those like dopamine little rewards when we make those purchases, but then they're gone. Like it's not the lasting happiness. And as you shared, when we're in that cycle, we're like, and we need to keep that lifestyle, or we're not paying off our debt or saving money or whatever with those choices, we end up staying stuck, in jobs and situations longer than we would otherwise. If we, met someone like you, worked with someone like you, and became intentional about our spending and what we really want for our lives.
Yeah, I agree. It's the number one thing I tell people all the time. So the number one thing that you can control is how you spend your money. Like, you can't control what's going on in the world, the market. Like, the world's crazy right now. Like, let's be honest, right? Like, it's absolutely nuts. And you can't control that. How you can control how you show up. You can control what's important to you. You can control how you spend your income, because your income is the number one asset that you own. Your ability to make money. That's how you're going to be able to do all the things that you want to do in the future. And if you don't use it intentionally, like you said, you're just throwing away your time. You're throwing away your energy. You're throwing away all, like you said, you're going to be probably living with some regrets, right, as you get older. And so don't do that, right? Just take the time to be curious about where your money's going, why it's going there. Is that important to you? Start asking those questions, and you can at least have somewhere to start. That's a good place to start.
It is. So, Billy, I can imagine some of our audience may want to reach out or learn more about you and your work. So where can people connect with you?
Yeah, the place I probably spend most of my time, right, is LinkedIn. And so I always direct people there because they get to see my content and how I post and how I use my words. And it just gives you a great insight to how my mind thinks, how we do advising. So always reach out to me there. That's going to be the easiest place to find me. But yeah, come check me out. Send me a request. I'd love to connect.
Good, great. Well, we'll put a link to your LinkedIn profile in the show notes. And I really enjoyed this conversation and appreciate you spending time with me.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. This was, it's always a great conversation with you. It just felt like it was just us anyways. So, yeah. You know what I mean? So, I appreciate your time and having me on today. So
thank you, Billy. Well, to everyone who's tuned in to listen today, thank you for spending this time with us. This is Returning to Soul, and we're so glad you're here. Until next time, be well.